Hi, Jeff Lawton here, and I'm inside what I've been calling the chicken tractor on steroids. Except there are no steroids here. This is a naturally fed system. These birds have no input of grain. They're producing a very special high quality compost, and it's moving across the landscape, leaving the compost element behind. Let me take you through this system and explain to you how we've developed this so far and all the applications that this amazing system could have for organic growing worldwide and food, sustainable and security systems. This is an old car trailer. It was actually used by the farm for over 10 years on the road, and when it became unroadworthy and not worth repairing, we converted it here. It's a high-sided car trailer, so it holds a little bit of extra mulch inside it under their bedding. We've built a frame around it, we've put a roof over the top, we've put perches inside that fold up and a door that folds up, and we've built nest boxes on either side. So no matter which way it's facing, the chickens can choose the most comfortable side to lay their eggs. The comfort of the bird here is most important, because when we take the stress off the animals, we get more production. They do more work, they produce more eggs, we get a better result. We've put an automatic watering system here that when we fill up this 10-gallon container at the top here, 20 litres of water, the small gravity pressure keeps the water supply continuously for the birds. They never run out of water, as long as we keep our eye on the main supply. We've got shell grit. They've got free availability of shell grit when they're outside. This is the grit that allows them to grind up seeds, because birds have a gizzard, a muscle in their throat full of grit that they use to grind hard seeds. They get better feed that way. And then we've got a dust bath underneath. This whole system is mobile, so we can move away from the compost cages, compost tractoring our way across landscape, around a garden or through an orchard. And if it's not the type of garden or orchard we want, and we want to make a transitional conversion, this is a key hinge pin element that could really make that conversion much more dynamic and much easier. This is a very low cost solution. Here we have the bedding, and this has been in here about a week. There's bedding for the nest boxes, but the main ingredient here we're interested in is the bedding under these perches, because the birds perch here at night, they're locked in, and they're continuously manuring this mixed mulch. And we're using paddock mulch off the fields. It's a whole mixture of different plants and herbs we've picked up from the fields and the pastures, and it's heavily manured by these birds every night, and they're actually scratching through it. And the nest boxes are on the side where we get all the eggs. This is the initial inoculum ingredient at the bottom of the compost cage. 8 a.m. Sunday morning, and our chickens are ready to start work. Here we go. There we go. Good morning. So behind the trailer, we have this cage. We've made this up so it comes apart with solid pins here and falls apart. And this is what assembles the materials. So we've assembled materials in layers here. We've taken the bedding out that's been underneath their perches for a week, and that's the bottom layer. Then we've brought in other animal manures. We've brought in cow and horse manure from the farm, and we put that layer next. And then we've added food scraps. Our food scraps and food scraps from restaurants and fruit and vegetable shops in town. And we keep adding those. They're scratching through all this, and they're making this into the initial inoculum. It's then assembled as a compost, and week by week this cage is disassembled every week and a new assembly is made, leaving a completed compost outside our netted fence after 4 weeks. That can be turned 1 or 2 more times to make it a very high quality compost, but these birds have started this process. They're not only eating vegetables and some of the manures and fruit scraps and food scraps, they're also free ranging inside of here, and very importantly, they're eating macroorganisms in the initial compost process. They're eating microorganisms, it would appear, as well as they scratch through. Their protein is coming from the composting event that we've facilitated here. And you can't see exactly what they're eating, but their protein content is very high, we would say. And the indicator is the quality of the compost that we get in at the end. And that's indicated later on in the garden production. We have here about 28 birds inside of this system. We have a roost that will hold 36 birds. We have 6 perches that will take 6 birds. Now, the perching of birds is measured by the stretch of a man's hand, roughly, a wide hand stretch. That's how much a bird needs on a perch. So if you measure your perches by a hand stretch from thumb to little finger, that gives a bird quite comfortable room for perching. Each of the perches here can perch 6 birds, and we have 6 perches. So this is a maximum chicken powered system of 36 birds, and that's quite a lot of scratch compost power. These birds have they've not been fed, no outside food apart from the food scraps, for over a month now. And initially, having been fed on grain, they were kind of confused. They didn't know where they were going to get their feed, and they were looking a little bit as if they had to learn the process. But they started to scratch. One by one, they started to get in amongst the composting, and they started to work harder and harder. And they started to adapt. They actually lost a little bit of condition. But we've got another chicken tractor running on food on demand, tractoring in this garden next to us. And we kept a log of the egg production. And these birds kept up with the other birds. They've never produced less eggs, they've only produced more. The lowest they've got down to is an equal egg production to the other chicken tractor fed on grain, but quite a few days they've gone considerably more, up to 1/3 more in egg production on the compost fed birds. Now, their condition is not perfect, and they took a little while to adapt, but I don't think chickens are supposed to look like perfect birds. These are hard-working birds. They look like they're working hard. They've probably got better muscle tone. I'm sure they've got a more diverse diet, and they look like they're more resilient. And that's what we need. We need more resiliency, and we need more functions out of every element, and they've definitely increased their function. Now, those are my compost chickens down there, producing compost, not being fed on any external chicken feed. And here's our baseline. These are our chicken feed, grain-fed chickens. They're preparing ground for us, but they're costing money to get that production. This is the baseline. This is the egg production comparison. Chicken tractors over there in compost production are older birds. There's less birds, but they've kept up with the equal egg production. In fact, they've gone past these guys on quite a few days. Here we go. Week 1. This has just been here 1 week. Now this way. Week 2. This is a week later. This is 2 weeks old, and the chickens have scratched it all out. We're going to reassemble it. Week 3, this has been here 3 weeks now. After the cage, we go on to our 3rd pile outside the cage. This is the 4th week, and this pile is going to turn outside the fence. And if it's turned again, it's going to be turned by us, not the chickens. This is going to go outside chicken influence.
Yep.
We're all good?
Yeah, everyone's good. Now we're moving down 2 cage distances. There we go, that's it. Chop back down. That's all there is to it. This is the move that gets us the product away from the chickens. This compost now is separating after this away from our chicken action. Yeah, so now we're going to start dismantling the fence and we're going to move it down 4 meters. We're going to make a 4 meter move in the landscape. That's the size of the increment on this particular tractor. So you can see the chickens absolutely love it in there. They've got a fresh batch on the way. We'll keep adding food scraps to that every day because we have quite a large kitchen, and we'll keep bringing it in right up to the end of the week. This one's been a week now in process, and we now are going to do the turn. We're going to conglomerate this together, and all of a sudden the chickens are going to be really re-interested in this one. Then we're going to turn the next one and the next one and assemble all these heaps in our way, and the chickens are then going to deassemble them for us for next week's turn. The next turn mixes it even further, the next turn even further, and the last turn outside the fence we've got a finished product. So in about 30 days, 1 calendar month, we've got a finished product that could go straight on a garden. I think it's sievable at that stage. It could be turned into a sieved product and used for seed raising with sharp sand. You've got your initial product. Of course, you could turn it over a few more times, you could make it more high grade, but we're at the starting point of real fertility, egg production without much cost, and very high quality, nutrient dense organic food. One of the things you might have doubts about is the labour component. We've got a lot of people helping us here. We've got staff and interns speeding up the process just for this film. But if you go through the analysis, and I've made compost for over 20 years, I've done my 10,000 hours, I've mastered the subject of hand-built compost. I've taught Berkeley method, 18 days. It's one of the fast methods where you can see the event change in front of you and you do all the turning. And I've made many heaps. I've had up to 13 heaps turned at once by myself, 6 one night, 7 the next. And I know how long it takes to turn a pile. It's half an hour, 20 minutes if you're really fit, 45 minutes if you go steady. Let's say an hour at the outside to turn a pile. I could turn a pile in 20 minutes, a 1 cubic meter pile, and file it back up like we just have. But if you construct it, you then leave it for 4 days, and then you turn it every other day for 14. That's 8 turns. Call it 9 with a construction turn. There's at least 3 hours. If you take an hour to turn each one, it's 9 hours. But let's say I could turn them in 3 hours. Here, we fill the trailer up with mulch. We fill the cage up with the mulch of last week and the manure and the food scraps. And we add food scraps regularly during that week. Then we turn that pile. Then we turn the next pile, the next pile, and the next pile. There's only 4 turns in this event, maximum 5. So we've nearly halved our time to make the equivalent of a Berkeley compost heap, which is a very good aerobic heap, and it teaches you to compost. You see the event happening, but you do here as well, because you see it turn every week. And I can tell you that's a pretty good looking pile we've got at that stage. Now, if you add that up, you've halved your labour time over 4 weeks instead of 18 days. You've done 4 turns or 5 turns over a month instead of 8 or 9 or 10 turns possibly over 18 to 20 days. But you've got 30 chickens producing 30 eggs a day. At least 10 eggs a day, that's 300 eggs. At 20 eggs a day, that's 600 eggs. 600 eggs in exchange that you haven't had to feed your chickens and a little bit of infrastructure. That makes this an impeccable system. But I would also say that compost is a higher grade than most Berkeley compost, and it's a regular grade. And if you get your standard ingredients ready, which you will have locally, you've got yourself a recipe for a real sustainable element in amongst crop gardening and orchards. Welcome. Chicken tractors on steroids without steroids. Just good product all the way.